Another huge piece of news last week that, speaking of scams, $9 trillion asset manager BlackRock registers Ethereum trust in Delaware. BlackRock officially files for then the spot Ethereum ETF with the NASDAQ. Everyone's celebrating, not realizing that they'll probably just, dump ETH on their heads later on. What is it with these people, okay, that are allegedly interested in crypto, that are celebrating the Bitcoin ETFs and now celebrating the ETH ETFs? All over crypto Twitter last week, you saw like, oh my God, ETH ETF, send it, do they not understand? Maybe send it for like a little bit. And then, huge players that you will never be able to compete with will just absolutely bitch slap you on the way back down. Let alone the fact that, again, this isn't crypto. It's just more bastardized versions of it and an ETF for grandma and grandpa to buy. So what I will say, and I want you to talk about your piece on that, Ewok, but I am curious, though, what maybe this does for altcoins in the meantime. I don't know if it's one of those things where they're usually going to follow Bitcoin and ETH, and are usually going to lag behind them in a bull market, then lag after them, have higher highs after Bitcoin and Ethereum start to go down. But I wonder, could this suppress the whole market, these ETFs and them eventually dumping? But because this is ETH, which is kind of like the final boss of altcoins. They're really going to, ETH is really going to pull up the altcoins. Could that make this an even more bullish cycle? I don't know. There's a lot of different angles to that, but what do you make of this story overall anyway?
Yeah, I think it could. I think, as we always say, the rising tide lifts all the ships. The one thing I think it will do is once it does rise and people, will ultimately, the big players will take profits. I think there will be enough capital coming in to kind of maintain it. And we may not see as harsh of a dip in the next bear market, hopefully. I think there will be, as time goes on, things get stronger, they get heavier, they get harder to move. And you're not going to see those 95% pullbacks. Bitcoin, the very first year, it did a 90% pullback. Then the next one, it did an 85. Now it's doing 80. So each cycle, it definitely does less of a pullback. Well, I think that holds true for the rest of the markets too. The stronger they get, the heavier they get, as well as being correlated together. It definitely helps things, maintain a lot less harsh of a pullback. But that's just my opinion. I think they become a little stronger, but it will be still manipulated, and that's the thing you really have to be careful of. How hard will it run? Because a lot of those major investors aren't looking for a 10,000x. They're happy when they invest a couple $1 billion and they get a 3 or 4x. For them, that's sufficient, and they'll sell. That's all they're really looking for. So,
yeah, that's really the thing to look out for, is like maybe not necessarily the tokens that you're personally invested in, but the overall stature of the market. Like, when are these big players going to get out? That's the thing that we have to be alert about as we get deep into 2024. And I wanted to I think it was Murder Yoga 10P said, I think this bull run is going to exceed all our expectations. It's one of those things where, like, what is the expectation? Because, the most people do believe, and we're going to get into expectations again with the pulse chain ecosystem tonight. That's what our poll actually is about as well. But, everybody, like the majority, thinks the BTC is destined for definitely six figures, if not 120K, maybe 140K. So the crowd thinks 100 to 140K for BTC. It would make sense to me. We saw about a 3x the last time. I guess you would think maybe we get a 2x this time, but we are seeing, some of the widest adoption, even though it's, again, bastardized adoption with these funds. But all these major players coming into the market. I don't know what to think. I'm kind of sick of the business of like trying to project something, and it's, to the credit of Mr. Chinks in the chat a minute ago, this is what I've been saying for a long time too. There's nothing wrong with keeping expectations low. That way, if we do get faces melted off, it'll be epic. Otherwise, expect it. Yeah, That's why, I mean, like maybe throw out, I mean, know what you want to invest in, but don't worry so much about price targets and worry about like how much can I get into the market right now. I want to get in as much as possible. And I agree wholeheartedly. I would much rather have lower expectations,
Right.
but it's a win-win. I mean, like if I because I'm being more aggressive now, I'm doing everything I can right now to get into the market. I'm not just sitting here with that stupid ass lottery ticket mentality, thinking that I'm going to get a 10,000x on everything I invest in.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's why it's kind of good to have, it's one of the topics that we're going to talk about is you've got Sami saying one thing and you got the Westcott guys saying another thing. It's kind of good to have both, right? I mean,
Mm,
maybe Sami doesn't want to overshoot. Maybe he doesn't want to say what he really thinks, but he wants to be safe, right? Um, and maybe Westcott doesn't care. He's 10,000x for everything. Well, Richard designed all of this stuff very similarly with different with very similar tokenomics type game theory anyway. We know what Ethereum did. We know what's possible. Pulse Chain is just a clone of Ethereum, so why not? It did a 14,000x in the first 5 years or so.
yeah,
Why isn't that possible with Pulse Chain? I don't see why it's not. It's very similar. Fees are lower. When we talked about it earlier, how the gas prices have got out of control there for a little bit. Um, that's what it's going to take to get people over there and maybe get the Ethereum devs working on a solution. I
right.
think it kind of all circles back around, and there's complete possibility where it could do a 10,000x, which would be freaking fantastic. Might not do it the first cycle, but by the second, I don't see why it can't. It was designed very similarly. So, it's good to have both options. It's good to have both opinions coming at you so that, somebody's going to be right. But, some people don't want to undershoot because then the people that they onboard say like, well, why didn't you tell me it could really do this? Well, I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to expect it, right? And then you get the guys that shoot low, that then the people are upset because you underestimated, and so you get you got to find somewhere in the middle, right? It's going to be somewhere in the middle. Take all these averages, and that's probably going to fall right in the middle of all those somewhere on this cycle. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're losing either way if you're really holding somebody else accountable for like their
Well, that
prediction
too.
at the end
Yes.
of the market, I think, regardless of what direction it is. We're getting a lot of really good comments because I just saw another one I wanted to get to when you were when you were going on there. Shit. Oh man, I think I missed it. But something you said, Ewok. So ETH did a 14,000x over like the first 5 years or so. So add that up. That's also that's another thing we need to differentiate here. And something that I don't think a lot of people are being clear on. Are you talking about this cycle? I don't mean you, Ewok. I just mean people when they're talking about like these X's predictions or whatever. Are you talking about like the next year to 2 years? Or are you talking about ever? If you're saying, oh, yeah, Pulse Chain is going to do a 10,000x. Well, I mean, if you're waiting to wait like a decade maybe for that or something, then maybe it could happen. I mean, define what we're also talking about here. Because if it's multiple cycles, yeah, I do agree. Especially with even like Pulse X, I think it's generous to give it multiple cycles to really see what it can do.
Mhm.
And we
Yeah.
all plan on being in this for multiple cycles, obviously. So I think that's an important thing to qualify too. Like, what's the time frame here? Are we talking about a year from now, or are we talking about like ever?
Right. Yeah, and
So
that's the one thing that they don't state. What is the time frame? Yes, it can do
right,
a 10,000x. Of course it can, but how long, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So